Welcome back to The Healing Habit, where we talk about the importance of healing and how to make it a part of your everyday life. I'm your host, Cassie, and with us we have brain health coach, life coach, and Harvard University forgiveness champion, Renatha Lollis. Renatha, we're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Cassie.
Yeah. So today on this episode, we're going to be talking about.
Who you could be if you actually let go of the offense. This is a step 5 in the forgiveness model, teaching people how to become more forgiving.
Wow, I'm so excited to hear about this. All right. Well, take the lead.
Well, it's interesting when we talk about forgiveness. I don't think we really consider the impact that it has on us individually.
Right.
So each person, whether they are dealing with an offense or they have offended someone, is going to be impacted by their behavior. And oftentimes, it is very easy for the negative impact of a situation to start to sort of burrow its way into our lives and impact how we respond to our environment around us.
Yeah.
And unforgiveness is just like any behavior that impacts us. It affects how we respond to other relationships and can move forward in sort of enhancing some of the triggers that we have in our life because we are experiencing and we're being reminded of this behavior that hurt us deeply. And what we're unaware of in most cases is that our response to what was done to us has a subtle influence on how we sort of move and show up in the world.
Wow. Wow. And I want to really quickly refresh because we talked a little bit in the forgiveness model about, well, a little bit actually, we've talked in depth in the forgiveness model about the first three steps, which step one was acknowledging the offense. She's testing me now. She says yes.
Yes.
Uh, step one was acknowledging the offense. Step two is identifying the feelings and or the emotions, and then step three is um recognizing who you are affecting by unforgiving
Yes, who's really impacted by holding on
to unforgiveness.
to unforgiveness? Yes, very good,
Okay.
Cassie.
I'm so proud of myself.
You should be. You should be. That's awesome.
I'm learning.
And so, in remembering that each one of the steps builds on the other. So,
Yes.
as we think about this, it can be easy to try to pull out one step, but this really is about a progression. And as you
Mm.
walk through the steps of, acknowledging the offense, identifying the emotions, and really then thinking about who is impacted by holding on, it prepares you for this current step of who would I be if I was willing to let go?
Yeah.
Like, what would change in me? And I think that the first question that we really need to sort of address is what is happening in me as I'm holding on to unforgiveness,
Mm.
right? So, in this process of being offended and holding on, it has a negative impact because your focus in that moment really is about the pain. It is about the hurt. And we're holding on to something that really almost operates like sand in our life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever been to the beach, but when you go to the beach, sand gets everywhere.
Oh, don't I know
Everywhere.
it?
It gets in your clothes, in your shoes, in this big hair. Sand gets everywhere. And we think, though, and this is a real life example, my husband and I had gone and dropped someone off at a hotel that was on the beach. And we said, you know what, since we're here, we'll just go maybe walk on the beach a little bit. And all we did was walk on the beach. We took off our shoes. We didn't sit down. We simply took a walk on the beach and enjoyed the sunset. By the time we walked to the car, about 30 minutes later, I had to shake sand out of my hair because sand had gotten in my hair. My head never touched the beach, but it sort
Wow.
of blew in and connected with everything.
Wow.
And when we're dealing with negative emotions, we tend to think that they're more siloed than they actually are. That when I have this negative interaction and I allow unforgiveness to take root in my heart, it gives me a negative, or it can give me a negative interaction with other people. So now, as I'm holding on to this unforgiveness in one particular area, it can then become a trigger. So if I experience something else, it reinforces this negative thought process,
Mm.
which then allows me to extend unforgiveness in another area. And it goes on and on and on, where we can end up becoming negative people and responding negatively to situations before we even recognize it because we've allowed offense to take root in our heart.
Yes, this literally just happened to me. And it was crazy because it was something that wasn't actually happening. And I recognized it like 0.3 seconds after I did it.
Mm.
But I recognized I totally had taken an offense that had happened to me recently and applied it to a different like person who had absolutely nothing. And I said, well, you're going to do this. Like I literally told her what she was going to do. And she
Yes.
says to me, I'm not gonna do that. Like, I could see, like, her eyes. I was like I had to apologize to her because I was like, I recognized that I was projecting something that had happened to me from something that wasn't related to this at all, and I am so sorry for doing that to you.
Yes. Okay. So, can I just applaud you really, really quickly because you were able to identify it and you apologized. Many times, if we're not thinking about these things, if you weren't actively engaging with this model, then it's in all intents and purposes, you may have been able to not been able to recognize it. And you definitely wouldn't have been able to come out of it so quickly to be able
Yeah,
to apologize and see it.
yeah,
Because in our minds, we're looking at a behavior, and what we're saying is, to me, this is exactly the same thing as that happened in my past. So this must be the outcome.
yeah,
So your brain just likes to connect the dots.
yeah,
It goes, this is the same, this is the same, so that must be the same.
yeah,
And it isn't true. But in that moment, your emotions are signaling you that something is happening
yeah,
here, right? And our emotions, while they are wonderful and they're amazing gifts, their job is not to tell us the truth. Their job is to help us understand that something is wrong, to get our attention. That's what our emotions are supposed to do.
yeah.
So in that moment, you were able to allow your emotions to give you information, but because you have been studying and participating in this forgiveness model, you were able to then apply it and make a change to salvage a relationship and to lead to healthy interactions.
And I think that that's the point of this podcast, and I love when we have things happen to us like in our lives where we're like, wow, this has so much purpose. Even for us hosting the podcast or being on the podcast, like it's it's something that if it's impacting us, I know it's impacting others, and
Yes.
that makes me so excited because, like, that is why we're doing this. We're studying this together so that we can start to apply it in our daily lives in little ways,
Yes.
and that was just a great example of a time that, man, and also I hope that the people listening to this can experience this and be like, "Wow, I'm not alone."
Yes.
Because that's my heart. Like I share these things because I recognize that I can't be alone in this, you know?
You're
Like,
not.
man, I shouldn't have snapped at that person. I could get really down on myself and then go through the whole having to forgive myself situation.
Mhm.
Or it can be like, wow, you know what? We're all humans and we're all here on this earth learning how to be better, you know?
Yes.
And
Because
that's
we
the
all
point.
are, and that's the
Yes.
point, Cassie.
Yes.
We're walking these things out in real time,
Yes.
and we are choosing to engage with the material and allowing ourselves to reap the benefits of what it looks like to become a more forgiving person. And with healing, when we choose to make it a habit, we're making those little small changes, incremental changes that are going to have a huge impact not just on us, but on the people around us. Now, there's also something interesting that happened in that interaction with your friend is that when you demonstrated what it looks like to be able to, in the moment, recognize when you have stepped or projected or accused or whatever language a person would like to use, in that moment, when you were able to quickly course correct and apologize, you modeled behavior. And she got an opportunity to see what it looks like in real time to be able to see and understand and then pivot.
Mm,
So it makes this whole process contagious.
yeah.
As we are shifting and changing, we're modeling behavior that other people can then see and they can adopt in their lives.
Mhm.
So, what we're trying to do is create an epidemic of forgiveness
Yes.
that every single person sees what it's like to be forgiven and what it looks like to watch someone forgive so
Mhm.
that they can experience these benefits and we all can then benefit from that.
Wow. I mean, it's so cool watching lives get, like, changed and affected by this, and like you were just saying, like, it being contagious, like,
Yeah.
part of the reason why I recognized and apologized so quickly and kinda had to eat my own pride there, was because I was remembering that situation that I spoke about, like, a couple episodes ago where my friend had done that to me. Where
Yes.
then they went up and apologized to me very quickly, and I remember how that made me feel. I
Yes.
was like, "Wow, I was upset with this person, and now I feel, like, really cared for." And it wasn't, "Ugh, I can't believe that they even did that," and that just reminded me of the offense and all that stuff. It really paved a way for forgiveness, which
Yes.
is a really interesting concept too, like, forgiveness might be slightly easier if the other person's also participating.
Yes. Well, and it would be easier, but
Yeah.
that's not always the case. But you said something really important, how receiving or watching someone else demonstrate this behavior shaped you, and your willingness to be able to forgive that person
Mhm.
then helped you be able to step into this because you had seen it modeled.
Yeah.
So this is the ripple effect that I'm talking about. You saw the benefit of forgiving yourself and asking for forgiveness because it was modeled to you. Now,
Yes.
the same thing is true with unforgiveness. When we see unforgiveness modeled, we're shaped by it. We're shaped by watching or experiencing a grudge being held. Our thoughts are going to be impacted by it. So, as we hold on to this offense, who we are is being molded by what we're experiencing.
Yes.
It's also impacting us because these unresolved emotions are living in our life. They're a part of who we are because we're holding on to them. We become repositories for our own anger and upset. And that sort of, again, like sand, impacts other areas of our life because we're now being shaped by what we've experienced when we can choose to release and receive those amazing benefits that we have by choosing to become a forgiving person.
Right. So if unforgiveness is also contagious, then how do we function? Because I know there's a lot of people in the world who operate like that, where they're
Yeah.
like, unforgiveness is their MO. Like,
Yes.
they're just kinda like, "That's how I am."
Yeah.
And kind of almost carrying around that victim mentality a
Yes.
little of like, well, that shouldn't have happened to me. I can't believe that happened to me. And people who surround themselves with yes men who then are like, that shouldn't have happened to you. I can't believe that happened to you. So it can be discouraging, right? So then if a person is constantly seeing that unforgiveness towards themselves, how do they fight that to become like it feels like an uphill battle to
Yes.
become a more forgiving person,
Yes.
you know?
Well, I can speak to this from personal experience because I used to be a huge grudge holder.
Mm,
I lived in a place of offense, and it was all consuming because I saw offense everywhere. Once you open the door to offense and you have been offended, and in my case, I had received some genuine offense. There were some things that had been done to me that were unkind and that hurt me deeply. But in my response to the pain, I began to see offense around every corner. I began to then look at people and project what I thought they would do based on how it reminded me of previous experience.
mm.
So when I talk about the power of forgiveness, I talk about it from a very experiential place because I know what it looks like to walk around expecting offense to happen everywhere. And there are a few interesting things that happen when you live that way. It impacts how you view people. So you live with an expectation of disappointment. You are simply waiting for it to manifest.
Mm,
You're expecting people to not honor their word. And that expectation now deals with and impacts how you communicate with them
yeah.
because you don't trust.
Mhm.
And if I don't trust you, then it's going to damage the intimacy that's in their relationship. How close can I really be to you if I am always expecting you to disappoint me?
Yeah.
And so now this thought process starts to impact every relationship
Yes.
because you're looking for offense everywhere.
Mhm.
So you don't have deep personal relationships. You don't because you are always believing the potential worst about every person.
Mm.
And so, not until I began to think about and understand how there were people that I wanted to be close to, people that I loved, and people who had only ever shown their self kind to me, that I was projecting my expectations onto them.
Yeah.
And as I saw the impact on those beautiful, meaningful relationships that I was having and how I communicated with them, how I connected with them, how they experienced me, I started to recognize that I'm not showing up the way that I want to.
Right.
I'm allowing my pain to dictate how I move in the world. And at that point, when someone who was genuinely offering me love, and I wasn't really sure how to respond in a way because I had been so tainted by my past perspective. I then had to start to ask myself some really tough questions. Is this the way I want to show up in the world? Is this who I really want to be? Do I want to be this distrustful, sort of nervous and anxious person who is always waiting for the other shoe to drop? And when I asked myself that question, and I recognized that this isn't who I want to be. This isn't how I want to show up in the world. This isn't how I want people to experience me. And I began the journey of becoming a more forgiving person. And now my goal in life is to live unoffendable.
Yeah.
I choose to live in a way that I am in a perpetual state of forgiveness,
Mm.
no matter the offense, because my desire is to be free. And in being free, as I'm working with clients, I get to model what that freedom looks like because it's glorious
Yeah.
to be able to live in a way that I am able to connect with people and I'm able to be open without fear. Now, there is a measure of wisdom in who you extend your openness to and how you build relationship because that comes with trust and over time. But it is so freeing to be able to know that I'm not bound by these negative emotions and that I get to live a life that's full of joy and that creates greater intimacy in those relationships that I choose to enter into.
That is so powerful because as you were saying all of that, I'm thinking about how, yeah, like I was thinking about how you strive to be unoffendable. And I was like, well, how does one get to that point, right? Because like obviously I see an offense that happened to me. And so my thought is, well, I'm going to work on forgiving them, but I still see that person in that way,
Yeah.
which might be a sign or a symptom that you haven't fully forgiven them yet, but to really recognize, like we've talked about in the previous episodes, like who are you becoming holding on to that offense?
Yeah.
You start becoming more petty, you start becoming more bitter. Um it's kinda all you can think about. So all of these things kind of compile and make you into a more negative person, and I think, like, what you're saying is the question you have to ask yourself is, like, is that really who you wanna be? Is that really how you wanna present yourself in this world? Or would you rather just, like, let the offense go and be like, I'm not gonna carry that around with me because I simply just don't have the time."
Well, and here's to add to that. It is coming to terms with the f the benefits of forgiveness and the consequences of unforgiveness. So as I am determining who do I wanna be, how do I show up in the world, who could I be if I let this go, I then open myself up to all of these possibilities that unforgiveness sort of choke out of my life. So if I'm a person who's showing up as anxious and depressed and distrustful and who feels like a victim, is this really who I wanna be? Is this really what I want to experience in life? And if it's the reality of who I am, then we have to sit in the truth of our current circumstance. But if I say I want to be more joyful, I want to be free from stress and anxiety. I want depression gone from my life. then unforgiveness, or excuse me, forgiveness is the door for us to be able to experience all of these things.
Yeah.
Because the benefits of forgiveness really make the decision to forgive one that's about you and not about the other person.
Yeah.
Because I'm making this choice because it makes the best sense for me.
Can I also add something
Sure.
here? Because I'm realizing this as I'm walking through this in my daily life. Like, letting go of the expectation for the person to change or to recognize, like, that they're doing something wrong. Because I think a lot of times w we will, or I know I do, like, I'll hold on to something because, man, I just want that person to get it.
Yeah.
I want them to learn how to be better, and I have learned over time in my life that if I just keep holding them accountable, like we've been talking about, then surely eventually they'll learn. And I think there's a point where we just have to be like, I'm going to let go of my expectation that this person is going to be who I need them to be.
Yes. Well, and that's freeing
Yeah.
because the only thing you can control in that scenario is you.
Yeah.
And many times with unforgiveness, that's what we're attempting to do. We're attempting to create transformation in another person by our
Mhm.
actions. But when we forgive, what we're saying is that my own emotional and mental health are more important than holding on to this offense.
Yeah.
That we say that I'm choosing to be a better person because I want to be a better person, not because of any expectation of the other person to change,
Yeah.
because those expectations are always going to fall short of reality.
Yeah.
Because every single person has a right to feel what they feel and to respond how they choose.
Mhm.
And so, in making this decision and examining who I want to be, what I am saying is that I'm no longer going to be controlled by what was done to me or by those expectations of other people.
Mm.
I am saying that I want to be a more joyful, more fulfilled. I want to be healthy. I want to have peace. And I am choosing to put that expectation before the expectations that I place on others. I'm choosing to say what I desire for myself is more important than my expectations of another.
Wow. Like, I feel like that is so powerful, and it's a something I didn't even like really think about before we came in here, but it's so true. Like, I don't want to hold on to that and be a negative person. And then, it's also the people that are around you are seeing this too. They're seeing, oh, that's all that she can talk about is how much this person offended her or upset her.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think it's not worth the relationship damage that you're causing from like other relationships that have to like hear about this over and
Mhm.
over again. And another thing too that I had heard once was, if you're not going to change anything about the relationship, then you shouldn't continue to talk about it. Because when you're pulling people into it, and what I mean by change something about the relationship is like if you're going to be talking about it, you need to think about the relationship critically. What are you going to change about the way you interact with that person? Because something needs to change or else it's insanity, right? The
Yeah.
same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's possible that maybe forgiveness and unforgiveness, I would say that unforgiveness is something of insanity where we're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. We're expecting somebody to change, but we're not changing anything about the way we're interacting with them.
Yes. One of the exercises that I do in my coaching practice is when I work with uh, one of the things that I do in my coaching practice, this is an exercise that I do to help people understand that they can be the change that they desire to see, is I share an algebra equation. So I'm going to ask you to sort of dust off some of that algebra that you may have learned in high school or even in college. An algebraic equation, if x plus y equals z, x plus y is always going to equal z. Because as long as those two variables, x and y, remain the same, the outcome is going to always be z. But if one variable changes, then the outcome has to change. So a person can remain the same, and they cannot make one bit of transformation. But if you, in relationship with them, decide to change, then that means the outcome has to change.
Yes.
So we get to be the change that we desire to see because we're choosing to be better people. And in these different scenarios, as we think about how we want to show up in the world, who we want to be, just imagine what could happen in the world if every person decided to show up as the best version of themselves.
Mm.
If every person decided that I want to be more forgiving, that I want to be kind, I want to be compassionate, I would like to extend to other people what I would want someone to extend to me. Just consider how different the world would be. That we would then be able to have this epidemic of forgiveness, and it would make the world a more forgiving place. And I believe that it would make the world a better place,
Wow.
that we would all be able to experience the very thing that we want given to us,
Wow.
that we would be able to usher in a season where we are all more forgiving and more loving and more compassionate. That's the kind of world I'd love to live in.
Wow, because it's a chain reaction, it
Yes, it
really is.
is.
Well, I think that that is a great, really encouraging place to end. Um, so thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of The Healing Habit. If you guys are interested in learning more about this, or you want a deeper understanding, or even if you want professional help, we've included links in the description down below where you can just dive deeper into the process of forgiveness. And, anyways, thank you. Continue listening, obviously, because we're just going to continue to dive deeper into healing and forgiveness. So, thank you for listening to this episode. And the next episode is going to be about
Deciding to forgive.
deciding to forgive. So come back for learning about was it the fifth and final step, right?
Actually, we have one more,
We have
6.
one more. Okay.
Mhm.
So the fifth step. So come back and listen to the fifth step of the forgiveness process, which is deciding to forgive. That's the big one. All right. I'm your host, Cassie,
And I'm Renatha.
and we'll see you guys on the next episode.